Aryna Sabalenka, facing investigation after shocking clash with Coco Gauff. Tennis hasn't seen a moment this explosive in years. What should have been a respectful Grand Slam showdown turned into a controversy spiraling out of control. One comment, one reaction, and suddenly the world number one found herself under fire. Fans demanded answers. Analysts questioned her integrity. Whispers of unsportsmanlike conduct spread like wildfire across the tennis world. And as pressure mounted, Sabalenka's response only made the drama sharper. Was this just frustration after a tough loss, or something far more serious? Because after this clash, nothing between Sabalenka and Gauff will ever be the same again. Before the clash, before the headlines, before the word investigation even entered the conversation, everything pointed toward Aryna Sabalenka standing on top of the tennis world. She walked into the tournament with the confidence of a champion who had already fought through storms and still found ways to rise. Her power, her presence, her mentality, all of it made her the player no one wanted on the other side of the net. But this wasn't just any tournament. This was the stage where pressure becomes louder, expectations become heavier, and every emotion becomes impossible to hide. And for Sabalenka, nothing added more fuel to the fire than knowing Coco Gauff was chasing her again. Their rivalry had been building quietly, match after match, each one revealing a new layer of tension. They respected each other, sure, but respect doesn't cancel competition. Respect doesn't soften ambition. Respect doesn't silence rivalry. From the first round, fans could feel it coming, the possibility of another Sabalenka versus Gauff showdown. A storyline already written in shadows long before the match was officially confirmed. Sabalenka's dominance was obvious. Her serve was a weapon. Her ground strokes were exploding off the racket. Commentators kept repeating the same phrase, "She looks unstoppable," but Gauff was not the type to step aside. She had beaten Sabalenka on massive stages. She had the speed, the discipline, the fire, and she had something else too, a calm that Sabalenka had always struggled to match. Coco never needed to shout to show strength. She never needed theatrics to make noise. Her silence was louder than Sabalenka's intensity, and that contrast alone was enough to make every meeting between them feel like a psychological duel. By the time the final arrived, the tension wasn't just on the court. It was in the audience, in the locker room, in the media rooms where journalists whispered about body language, last matches, little moments only insiders noticed. Everyone knew it was going to be emotional. Everyone knew someone would break before it was over, but no one expected it would go the way it did. Sabalenka walked into the arena with the aura of a player ready to swallow the moment whole. Yet there was something different this time, something restless beneath her composure. The weight of expectations sat on her shoulders heavier than ever. She wanted to prove she was the strongest player in the world. She wanted to beat Coco Gauff. She wanted to silence every voice that doubted her toughness under pressure. The match hadn't even begun, and the energy already felt like the beginning of a storm. Two rivals. Two contrasting worlds. Two paths colliding again, not just for a trophy, but for pride, validation, and control. No one could predict it then. But this final wouldn't just define a champion. It would ignite a controversy that would follow Sabalenka long after the last point was played. The stadium was electric the moment Sabalenka and Gauff stepped onto the court. A clash of intensity versus composure, raw power versus calculated precision. Fans expected fire, drama, and brilliance. But they didn't know they were about to witness the spark that would ignite the loudest controversy of the season. From the opening games, something felt off. Sabalenka started swinging big, as she always does. But her timing was scattered, her footwork a step late, her reactions slightly delayed. Instead of controlled aggression, it looked like frustration brewing at every mishit. Balls she normally crushed into corners were landing meters out. Her signature roar, the one she used to lift herself, was replaced with sharp breaths and increasingly tense glances toward her team box. Across the net, Coco Gauff wasn't doing anything dramatic. She wasn't provoking. She wasn't showboating. She was just playing her patterns, staying patient, letting Sabalenka unravel point by point. And that might have been the biggest trigger of all. Because when a player like Sabalenka feels the match slipping, the pressure doesn't just touch her, it grabs her by the throat. The errors kept piling up. 1, 5, 10, 20. The crowd gasped each time the ball clipped the net or flew long. Sabalenka's frustration became visible. The clenched jaw, the shaking head, the moments where she bounced the ball but couldn't calm her hands enough to serve. Still, she fought. She took risks. She refused to back down. And for a while, the match became a tug-of-war between belief and panic. But as the final set began, the emotions boiled over. Sabalenka looked at her box after a missed forehand and shouted something no one could ignore. The cameras captured every second. Commentators went silent. Fans exchanged looks. The energy shifted from competitive to volatile. And then came the moment that would define everything that followed. When the match ended, Gauff victorious, relieved, emotional, Sabalenka approached the net with a quick handshake, expression tight and unreadable. It wasn't disrespectful, but it wasn't warm either. It was the handshake of someone who wasn't ready to accept what had just happened. But the real shock came minutes later. In the press conference, Sabalenka didn't hide her feelings. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She didn't even try. Instead, she spoke with a rawness that instantly set the tennis world on fire. She admitted she lost control. She admitted she was emotional. But then she added the line that would dominate social media within minutes. She didn't win because she played incredible. She won because I made all those mistakes. That one sentence spread everywhere, dissected, criticized, amplified. Some called it honesty. Others called it arrogance. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. It was a spark thrown into a room soaked in gasoline. Reporters started questioning whether her comments crossed a line. Fans accused her of disrespect. Analysts debated whether she broke sportsmanship rules. And as the noise grew louder, whispers began circulating. Would the WTA take action? Was Sabalenka now facing more than just a tough loss? The fallout had begun, and there was no going back. The moment Sabalenka's comments hit the internet, everything changed. What started as a difficult loss instantly transformed into the biggest firestorm of her season. Within minutes, clips from the press conference were circulating everywhere. Edited, repeated, slowed down, highlighted in bold captions. The tennis world didn't just hear her words. They felt them, and the reactions were immediate. Fans who once praised her honesty suddenly turned against her. Comment threads flamed with accusations. Words like poor sportsmanship, unprofessional, and disrespectful flooded every platform. People weren't debating the match anymore. They were debating Sabalenka's character. Some fans defended her, insisting she was simply emotional in the heat of defeat. They argued that honesty shouldn't be punished, that every athlete cracks under pressure, and that Sabalenka had always been an open book. But their voices were drowned out by a much louder crowd, the ones calling her out, demanding accountability, insisting she crossed a line she couldn't just walk back from. And then came the analysts. Every talk show, every tennis panel, every former player with a microphone had an opinion. Some said she disrespected a rising star at the peak of her career. Others said she broke the unwritten code of sportsmanship by implying Gauff didn't truly outplay her. A few even accused her of sabotaging the spirit of the final by making it all about her mistakes instead of Gauff's victory. The pressure intensified. Headlines got sharper. Debates got hotter. Social media turned the moment into a battleground where every post felt like a swing in an emotional war. And then, almost out of nowhere, a new phrase started circulating. Is Sabalenka facing investigation? No one knew where it started. No one knew who said it first. But suddenly everyone was repeating it. Fans speculated that the WTA might step in. Bloggers claimed her conduct violated the sportsmanship code. Commentators hinted that her outburst toward her box and her press conference remarks could trigger disciplinary review. It didn't matter if it was true or exaggerated. The seed had been planted, and it grew fast. Every hour, more voices joined the storm. Neutral observers turned critical. Former champions weighed in with disappointment. Even public figures outside tennis chimed in, turning the situation into a wider conversation about attitude, humility, and respect. Meanwhile, Gauff's supporters amplified the narrative even more. They pushed the idea that Coco handled the moment with grace, while Sabalenka cracked under pressure and lashed out unfairly. Whether intentional or not, the storyline became crystal clear: Gauff, calm. Sabalenka nalhaorik. The internet chose its sides quickly. By the next morning, Sabalenka's name trended globally for all the wrong reasons. Reporters asked the same question in press rooms. Will the tour respond? Will Sabalenka be sanctioned? Is this officially under review? For Sabalenka, the noise wasn't outside anymore. It was around her, suffocating, multiplying, chasing her from interviews to practice sessions. She couldn't ignore it. She couldn't outrun it. The backlash had become too loud, too sharp, too personal, and for the first time, it wasn't just about the match she lost. It was about the reputation she stood to lose next. Everything was spiraling, and all eyes were waiting for her response. When the backlash reached its peak, Sabalenka finally broke her silence. Not on camera, not in a press room filled with bright lights and microphones, but privately, quietly, in a way that revealed how deeply the moment had shaken her. For hours after the match, she had avoided speaking. Her team said she needed time. Her close circle said she was exhausted. But the truth was more complicated. Sabalenka wasn't just dealing with a tough loss. She was dealing with the feeling that she had let the world see the exact version of herself she tries so hard to hide. The version that cracks. The version that gets emotional. The version that sometimes loses control. So when she finally chose to respond, it wasn't with fire. It wasn't with excuses. It was with something far more vulnerable: clarity. She admitted to herself first, and then to the world, that she had lost her composure. She said she wasn't proud of the way she handled the moment. She said she let pressure get inside her head, and for the first time since the final, she confronted her own words. She didn't blame Gauff. She didn't attack the umpires. She didn't claim unfairness. Instead, she acknowledged the chaos inside her during the match. She talked about the 70 errors she made. She talked about the frustration that grew with every mistake. She talked about wanting to win so badly that she started fighting herself more than she fought her opponent. And then she did something even more surprising, something no one expected. She reached out to Coco Gauff personally. No cameras, no press releases. Just one message from a player trying to make things right with another player who deserved respect. She apologized. She clarified. She let Gauff know that her comments were never meant as an attack. People around the tour later whispered that Coco responded with maturity beyond her years. The kind of maturity she's shown time and time again. But what mattered more was how Sabalenka reacted afterward. She didn't pretend the controversy wasn't real. She didn't hide from it. She didn't run from the criticism. Instead, she leaned into it. Her next public statement was softer, calmer, almost reflective. She admitted she was super emotional and that she wished she had handled things differently. And that honesty changed everything. The tone, the mood, the narrative, all of it shifted. Fans who were furious the night before began reconsidering. Analysts acknowledged the courage it took to walk back a mistake so quickly. Even neutral followers praised her willingness to hold herself accountable. But beneath all that, one truth stood out. Sabalenka was hurting, not because she lost the match, but because she felt she had lost control of the one thing she values most, her emotional integrity. She had always been known as a fighter, a powerhouse, a player who wears her heart on her sleeve. But this controversy showed a side of her that even she wasn't ready to face. This wasn't about a misquote, or a bad press moment, or a rivalry gone too far. This was about pressure. This was about expectation. This was about an athlete trying to grow faster than the world judged her. Sabalenka's response wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time since the final, she started taking back control of her own story. But redemption doesn't come from words alone. It comes from what happens next. After days of noise, criticism, and speculation, something unexpected began to happen. The storm started to settle. Not because people forgot, not because the controversy disappeared, but because Sabalenka finally stepped into the one arena where words don't matter, the court. And when she returned, the world saw a version of Aryna Sabalenka no one expected. Instead of anger, there was focus. Instead of defensiveness, there was purpose. Instead of emotional volatility, there was a quiet resolve that felt almost unfamiliar. She trained harder, stayed longer, spoke less. She wasn't trying to win fans back. She was trying to rebuild herself. But the true turning point came in a way no fan, absolutely no one, could have predicted. Weeks after the controversy, a social media clip exploded online. Sabalenka and Gauff, laughing, dancing, side by side in a light-hearted moment that looked so casual, so natural, so normal that the internet couldn't believe it. The same players who had just been the center of the biggest controversy of the season were suddenly sharing a playful moment, like nothing had ever happened. It wasn't staged. It wasn't forced. It wasn't some PR stunt. It was two competitors, two rivals, simply being human. People had spent weeks debating whether Sabalenka respected Gauff, whether Gauff resented Sabalenka, whether their rivalry had turned personal. But this clip? It silenced all of that. And when reporters asked Sabalenka about it later, she didn't dodge the question. "It's cool with Coco," she said. Simple. Direct. A statement that carried more weight than any apology ever could. That one line did what hours of interviews never achieved. It reminded everyone that rivalries aren't wars. Athletes clash, break, and heal much faster than fans think. What mattered was how Sabalenka chose to move forward. And her actions spoke louder than the controversy that had nearly swallowed her. But the redemption arc didn't stop there. Sabalenka faced Gauff again. Under pressure, under scrutiny, with the world watching to see if the storm of emotions would shake her once more. And this time, she didn't crumble. She didn't flinch. She didn't break under the weight of their history. She fought. She executed. She controlled the moment. She played with intelligence and calm, the very qualities critics said she lacked. And when she defeated Gauff, it wasn't revenge. It wasn't payback. It wasn't an emotional eruption. It was clarity. In her post-match reflection, Sabalenka admitted she had learned from the chaos. She spoke about discipline, mindset, and refusing to let emotions bury her game again. She even confessed that she had replayed her breakdown in her head over and over until she understood how to prevent it, and the world listened differently this time. Because this wasn't the Sabalenka who stormed into headlines with frustration. This was the Sabalenka who had walked through fire and come out steadier. Rivalries are built on drama. Champions are built on moments like these. What began as a controversy had evolved into something else entirely. A lesson, a reset, and perhaps even a renewed respect between two of the biggest forces in women's tennis. But even after redemption, a question remained. Had Sabalenka repaired her public image? Or had the controversy permanently marked her legacy? The answer, as always, would come in the final chapter. The dust finally settled, but the echoes of that French Open final lingered. For Aryna Sabalenka, the match against Coco Gauff wasn't just another loss. It was a turning point. The controversy, the criticism, the questions about sportsmanship, and the sudden whispers of investigation had all forced her to confront herself in ways she never had before. And in that confrontation, a new version of Sabalenka began to emerge. Fans and analysts alike started to reframe the story. Instead of focusing solely on the meltdown, they began to recognize her journey of accountability. The player who had once let emotion dominate now showed glimpses of maturity and reflection. Her public apologies, her private gestures of reconciliation with Gauff, and her determined return to competition painted a picture of a competitor learning to control not only her powerful game, but her own responses to pressure. The rivalry with Gauff, once framed in extremes, dominance versus youth, Power versus composure had transformed. There was respect now, perhaps even admiration beneath the tension. Moments like the playful TikTok clip, or her later triumphs against Gauff, reminded everyone that even the fiercest competitors are human. They clash, they break, they reconcile, and sometimes they grow stronger because of it. Yet the story didn't end neatly. Some critics remained unforgiving. Certain fans continued to debate whether Sabalenka's outburst had crossed the line, and questions about her sportsmanship would occasionally resurface in commentary. That tension between triumph and scrutiny, between redemption and lingering criticism, is what makes Sabalenka's story so compelling. In sports, as in life, the most memorable moments are rarely clean or simple. For Sabalenka, the lesson was profound. Winning isn't just about points, sets, or titles. It's about how a player handles defeat, controversy, and the spotlight. It's about rebuilding trust, navigating expectations, and finding balance between emotion and strategy. And in doing so, she redefined what it means to be resilient. Her journey also raises a question for the tennis world and for fans everywhere. Can an athlete recover fully from public scrutiny when the court of opinion is often harsher than the one on which they compete? Sabalenka's example suggests that it's possible, but only with honesty, reflection, and a willingness to face oneself. As for the rivalry with Coco Gauff, the world can expect more sparks, more high-stakes matches, and undoubtedly more drama. But the foundation has shifted. Now it's built not just on competition, but on mutual recognition of each other's skill, pressure, and humanity. The fire that once threatened to burn bridges now fuels a narrative of respect and growth. And so, as fans reflect on that fateful clash, one question lingers in the air. Was this French Open final simply a heated rivalry match? Or was it a defining moment in Aryna Sabalenka's journey? One that transformed a raw, emotional powerhouse into a more resilient, self-aware champion? Only time will tell. Aryna Sabalenka's clash with Coco Gauff wasn't just another match. It was a storm of emotion, controversy, and reflection. A moment that tested her resilience, challenged her character, and reshaped a high-profile rivalry. From frustration and public backlash to apology, reconciliation, and redemption, this journey showed the world that even champions can stumble, learn, and grow. The final lesson is clear. Greatness isn't just measured in titles, but in how an athlete rises after the fall. If you enjoyed this story and want more inside looks at tennis rivalries, controversies, and emotional battles, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Share your thoughts below. Do you think Sabalenka fully redeemed herself? Or is the controversy still part of her legacy? We want to hear from you.